and you assume it's the French flag in the distance. Now, the connotation is far more interesting. Okay, so what is the connotation about? Well, one interesting thing, of course, is why did the photographer choose a young boy? When you meet soldiers, how old are they normally? 18. Yeah, 18 plus. So the photographer has deliberately chosen a child. And you'll find that in many images of the colonial other, they're presented as children or as women. The other thing which is interesting about this, the myth, you could argue, the story that's here, is that all the members of the French colonies, wrong empire, all the members of the French colonies are very happy, are proud to be a member of the French Empire. And of course, this is in Paris Match. This is not an intellectual newspaper or magazine. It's just something you read while you're waiting to have your hair cut. How much time do people really think about this image? Long or not long? A second before they look inside the magazine for something else. Okay, so that's the historical example, the example which Roland Barthes gives in Mythologies. And the question you can then ask is, well, so what? How is this relevant today? And you can look at this sort of advertisement. Again, this is from a woman's magazine, and it's an advertisement, it's cut off from DKNY, Donna Karan, New York. And at the level of denotation, so denotation is literally what you see. You have an image of a young woman. I think that's where you look first when you see this image. She's a young woman with long hair, which is messy, and what else about her? Her mouth is open, she's just had a bite of an apple, and she's holding her hand like this, and in the background, the colour green is very dominant. The green is significant.
She's looking directly at
So she's fine?
She's looking directly.
Good. Let's talk about that in a moment. That's where I'm going with this, yeah. And on the left-hand side, yes, you have these pictures, and on the right, pictures of apples. And here you have, what's this? Well, this is the anchorage, to make it clear. Well, hold on, what is being sold here? It's actually these bottles of perfume, DKNY perfume. As I say, the denotation is not very interesting. Builds up your vocabulary, but that's not really the interesting part. The interesting part is the connotation or the myth. And one way you can think about this is what you were describing, which is to think about, well, who is the assumed viewer? I told you this is from a woman's magazine, but who is the assumed viewer? Who is here looking at the image? Male or female? No, the person buying it is, but it's actually intended for the male. Now there's an assumption, what you will discover is that there's a binary being created. So between the male, not male, and what is the male doing?
Thinking about
You're
looking at
jumping.
her.
Yeah. Doing the viewing. Doing the viewing. And the not male receiving the. Yeah. What else about this? Now, if you don't believe this, it's spelt out literally in the top left-hand corner. Be delicious. Be delicious for whom? Yeah, for the assumed male viewer. Because what's another way? She's eating the apple. What's another word for eating? Not taste, starts with C. But, yeah, consume. So you have the idea of consumption. Now that's quite interesting. Consume is just a more formal word for to eat. Now remember, DKNY, and here you have an image of New York skyscrapers. New York, what is it famous for? And don't say musicals in the Empire State Building. Yeah, oh, well that's actually, I wasn't thinking of that. Yes, it's famous because its nickname is the Big Apple. Why else is New York famous? What? Fashion, we're going to go through a long list. Okay, if you were at the London School of Economics, what would you probably say?
Wall Street?
Yeah, Wall Street. What does Wall Street represent? Business, business. New York can be considered the centre of Western capitalism. It's why it was the centre of 9/11. That's why the Twin Towers were attacked. The capital of America is Washington, but the financial centre, if you like, is New York. Okay, what am I saying? So if you say New York is the centre of capitalism, what do you do within a capitalist society?
Spend the money.
What do you do with it? Yeah.
Buy.
You buy, what's another word for, and then what do you do with it, literally?
Consume.
You consume it. So there's a whole bunch of meaning here, okay? You're buying the product, but also you're consuming the woman. She is delicious. She is to be consumed. And who is she being consumed by? The male viewer. So what happens is you have this binary relationship. Now the big question would be, which one would you prefer to be on? Do you prefer to be on the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Because who is doing the action? And who is receiving it? This relationship is not equal. It reflects certain power relations. So you have what is a very ordinary, banal image. An image that you will find in any magazine. Today you can find this image. It's more modern, you know, they've got a different version of it, but it's the same idea. But, and again, when you buy a woman's magazine, how long do you look at the images? Yeah, not even a second. You go through quickly. But the argument that can be made is that these images, or Barth would argue, that these images are potentially dangerous in the sense that they're not natural or normal, and that they reinforce a certain view of reality. Okay, so in this case, it's the idea of the relationship between men and women within Western society. It's obviously not an equal one. Now, you want a counter-argument. You could say to me, Gary, she's looking straight to the viewer, and you've told me it's actually a male viewer, or the assumption is that it's a male viewer. But does she have a strong gaze or not? Is it strong? How is she looking? Because is her head like this, or is it like this? It's like this. This is different. And she's eating an apple. Within the history of the West, what woman do you know who likes apples?
Eve.
That's right, Eve. Eve. Now, is Eve good woman or bad woman in Christian mythology? Bad woman. Okay, because she persuades Adam to eat from the tree of knowledge. Similarly here, you could argue that at first glance she looks strong because she's returning the male gaze, but she's not. She's actually being the seductress. She is seducing the assumed male viewer. Wow. So much to say about such a boring image, an image that no one looks at. But as I keep saying, the images themselves, as Roman Barthes says, are not natural and normal. They reflect certain power relations within a certain society. at a particular moment in time. Great, I'm having a break. So here you have another image, another one of these DKNY advertisements from the same series. But this is the red variety. Oh, I forgot to mention, of course, green is nice because green has the idea of
Nature.
of Eden, of naturalness, of freshness. Red has a very different connotation, doesn't it? I'd like you, in many ways, this is a very similar image to the one you've seen before. But I'd like you, because I want to drink some of my coffee, with your neighbour to discuss this for a few minutes.
Like about the on that one, sorry. So the right color is very sexy, yes, and very tasty. I don't like
This works in the West,
full
but in
part of the image.
red makes a very different.
Why? The woman should be more, man can her in the future and especially this time. And she talks with him, but he didn't talk to him. He just like he tried to like get closer to man or something. And this part is also very nice. The table, with the shelter. Oh yeah. Oh, it sounds like fine. Alright. I think fine is also some symbol of the way. It's very sexy. It's not just part of the land doesn't come off, it's like the whole body in the middle of the Alright, so now we can talk about our holiday. There is enough crowd.
Right, okay. So,
Yes.
you could make an argument that the green DKNY is fairly terrible, a reflection of a consumerist capitalist society and a patriarchal society. This one, however, this one's much better. The people look much more equal, don't they? You've got that's coming up. These two sitting together. I mean, you could argue, she's in the dominant position.
Yeah.
She appears to be in the driving seat of this motorbike. Okay, her boyfriend is stuck on the back. Okay, she is in control, and she's looking directly to, again, who is the viewer here, do you think? Perhaps. So, but I'm not sure I would agree with that. Okay, one thing is, when you look at this image, where do your eyes go? Where is the point, the focus of this image? Yeah, I think so too. Because in fact, what actually happens is there's a triangle here, up to her eyes, and then down again. So in fact, this is almost like the Be Delicious and slightly above. That is the center point. The boyfriend is kind of pushed here out of the way. He becomes less relevant. But this has the influence of, but who is the viewer then? It's a male gaze, an example of the male gaze again. The assumed viewer is male. Again, this is from a woman's magazine. Okay. Now they look more equal, but of course, do you have a motorbike? Good, but if you had a motorbike, would you dress like this? Okay, so that's one problematic. You know, she can't really be a strong woman. She won't get very far. She'll have her dress in her face in about 2 seconds. There's also another interesting thing, which I just realised this afternoon. She's not actually sitting on the tank. She's not actually sitting on a seat. Okay, so, you know, when you start your motorbike, you're going to have to get rid of the girlfriend and put her round the back. I don't know, because that strikes me as quite dangerous. So, it has at first the appearance of greater equality, but in fact it doesn't. Again, yes, but again, counter-argument is that she's holding him. But I agree with you, because I think it's more like that he actually controls her. But there's other things going on as well. So you have, let's talk about the colour, of course, the colour red. And the colour red here can have the idea of passion, of lust, of danger. And of course, we've mentioned before the story of Adam and Eve. She's holding the apple. I think she's just had a bite of the apple. Interestingly, you'll notice, and you can't see, it's not a great image, but on this image and on the previous image, she can't close her lips. Her lips become highly sexualized. That often in this kind of advertisement, they don't do this. They should. What else about this image? Of course.
Like a Snow White.
Oh, hey, yes, like Snow White a lot, actually. The motorbike, of course, is probably a Harley Davidson. I don't know anything about motorbikes, but Harley Davidsons are symbols of masculinity. Yeah. She's sitting on the motorbike. Next week you do Freud. You can think about the implications of that. You can't see it here, but there's also the Empire State Building. Another example of phallic symbolism sitting in the background. In case you had any uncertainty, you know, this is a highly sexualized image. Literally sex sells. And again, you have the binary of the male gaze, the woman to be consumed. Red delicious, be delicious. And if you're really boring like me, and this is the full image, and that's why you can't read it. Once in an exam, I gave the students this image to interpret, to think about, and I spent an hour literally breaking it down. And what did I talk about? Things like the significance of the colour red, the position of the hands is interesting. Oh, another important thing to remember, and why when you first start this program you look at advertisements, is that everything is chosen deliberately. There is nothing natural or normal about this image. The photographer or group of photographers have spent days, weeks, I don't know, months thinking about this image. Okay, so they know exactly what they're doing. And they've probably come to places like Goldsmiths and done their Legion Comms degrees and actually thought about what they're doing. Yeah, the male dominates. What else have I got here? Oh, he's wearing jeans. I forgot about the clothing. He's wearing jeans. You can see him on a motorbike. Can't see her on a motorbike. Male gaze. Oh, no, silver athletes. Yeah. Yeah. And temptation again. Phallic symbolism. Okay. A very banal image. But in fact, there is nothing really very natural or normal actually about this. An image that you might see very, very quickly without thinking. Now, international students. We've talked about, I have made an argument that this analysis is useful at looking at Western advertisements. Your job as international students on the pre-sessional and on your degrees is to think about how relevant or not this theory is to your own cultural context. And when I teach students, I ask them to look at advertisements and commercials from their own country. And it works quite well, I think. So here you have a Korean advertisement for this product. And this is an alcoholic fruit drink. Now, again, in many ways, this is quite similar to the image that you've seen before. The use of the colour green. And red, I was going to say that. The colour green. Okay, green highlighting purity, freshness, naturalness, all these sort of connotations. By the way, you'll notice that I'm not doing denotation, I go straight into connotation. The red, of course, again, you know, culturally, red may have slightly different meaning, but as a foreigner, I look at this, that red is to do with passion, lust, sex, danger, possibly as well. Sex and danger all usually go hand in hand. And then, of course, you have the woman. Now, this is the culturally interesting part, because in the West, it's actually quite unusual to have a woman showing so much back. And again, how many Koreans are there in the group? Oh, shy Koreans, that's right. Okay. It's been pointed out to me that, you know, it's, as I say, it's a cultural difference. It's very unusual to see this amount of back in a Western advertisement. Where was I going? But there's something even stranger about this, which has been pointed out to me, that this has been photoshopped. Okay, so this image has actually been altered because who is the viewer? There's an assumption of a male viewer. This woman has become hyper-sexualized, bigger than super, hyper-sexualized. Even her body shape has been altered through Photoshop. Okay, she becomes a female ideal. And of course, this advertisement might be in a bar. In fact, it's from the net. But again, it's not an image that people are sitting in Korea and thinking, to what extent is this a reflection of the patriarchal society in Korea? People don't do that. It's just an image. It appears to be natural and normal, but in fact, it reflects, again, Roland Barthes again, certain power relations within Korean society. What else about this image? The bottle, of course, is fantastic. So, if for DKNY, you've got skyscrapers, and here you've got bottles. Nice Freudian phallic symbolism. Phallic symbolism, just it's the shape of a penis. You're going to do this perhaps next week with Ivor. But of course, the position is interesting, okay? It's very obvious.
I think it's another interpretation because the bottle is in the front and the woman is in the back. That's another way of representing the bottle.
Yes, you could say which is more important in your life. But yes, But there is still the idea of consumption associated with a woman as well. Okay, so it's quite an interesting image. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was the female gaze. Where is the woman looking? Well, she's not looking to the viewer. Well, yeah, the key point is she's not returning the male gaze. In the other two images, she's returning the gaze, but it's as the seductress. Here, she's not returning the gaze. She is here to be looked at. Okay. She becomes what, in fact? Fun? Yes. It could be a reflection of Korean values, but then you have to think, well, where do these values come from? And it leads back to the argument about what is natural and normal. Okay, how do you know that it is good to be reserved as a woman within Korean society? Okay, there's something else I was going to mention. Yeah, the back thing's very interesting. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Because I should have mentioned it earlier, with the idea that if the woman here, let's take my argument back, that she is there to be consumed, what does she become? Huh? Can you give me another word for product? You're absolutely
Object.
good. That's what I wanted. That's it. Literally, she becomes an object to be consumed. Okay. And within capitalist society, what do we do? Because most of us come from capitalist societies of different sorts. What do you do in a capitalist society? We consume. You buy products. You buy objects. So you could make, well, I will make the argument that in this image is in fact, the women's body becomes objectified. She loses agency. She is there to be looked at and to be consumed. And the argument would be that this is a reflection of women within Western society. But hey, don't worry about it. It's just as bad in Korean society, okay, of women to be consumed, like your alcoholic fruit juice. Aha! But you have to be careful. Okay, you are an international advertiser. Signs don't work across cultures. Okay, this is a fruit drink from China. That's right, yes, that's right. This is a fruit drink. You can't see it very well because it's a black and white copy. And this is the product. How do you feel? Good, can you reach out into it very quickly? Oh, actually, what does it say? Because I don't actually know. Okay, could you say that louder?
The refrigerator already has its plants, so what's the point of reading?
Wow, these are very, very depressed bananas. Okay, these are depressed bananas because I remember now, they can't compete with the fruit juice. So the bananas only have one choice. Okay. Now, of course, how successful would this commercial? Well, again, I think even in China, this is a strange commercial. Okay, but someone has paid money for this to be made. And of course, there's another interesting thing. If you're studying Freud, bananas, whoa, phallic symbolism. I half joke. I do not feel comfortable as a man looking at this image. Or similarly, you can have images like this. This is a Japanese advertisement for Muji. Muji is a stationery company. I mean, Muji's nice. They do lovely stationery, pens and papers. And you go into a Muji store, everything is super organised. Everything is beautifully organised. And I'm sure that some of you have Muji stationery with you now. This is a Muji advertisement for a Japanese audience. Okay, it's from Japan. Okay, with your neighbour for a second, why do you feel that this might not be a popular advertisement in the West? Go. Lots and lots of text. Western advertising doesn't have text. But it gives you an idea of how different cultures, the power of the word, so Western advertising tends not to have they have a long time.
Oh, it's like a nightmare.
Yeah, I think so.
This one doesn't have
magazines, and so
okay. So Muji as a company, it associates itself with everything as tidy and neat and controlled. And this is very neat and controlled. You have a nice box and the jumper is arranged like this. Unfortunately, of course, from a Western perspective, what does this say about your jumper? Yes, well, it's a dead jumper. And it's being put into a coffin. Okay, and now it's going to be buried. Very sad advertisement. Because for Japanese, there isn't the tradition of burial. Okay, the tradition in Japan is more of cremation, burning. So culturally, this works in Japan, but culturally, it would probably be not so successful in the West. Okay, this is really quite good. Now, I've talked about historic images, and I've talked about contemporary advertising in the West and in parts of Asia. And I'm making the argument that these images, although we may look at them quickly, they're not neutral. They give the appearance of being neutral, but they're not neutral. Okay, there is no real naturalness to them. And this is an advertisement at Goldsmiths College. And I have to explain the context. The details of the Royal Literary Fellows at your university. Royal Literary Fellows are teachers which help students with their essays. Not usually it's actually aimed at international. It's usually the home students, but also international students. And what I want you to do, because I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to read the text. So remember, this was an advertisement at Goldsmiths, and it's aimed at you. Okay, so think about that as I read the text. So one day in Dr. Pemberton's class, the essay is due next Tuesday. No excuses.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kitty, I get to write an essay. But later that night, gosh, I don't know what to write about. What should I do? I know, I'll go and see the RLF fellow. They always give me great advice. The next day, outside the fellow's office. That's all I need to do? But that's so easy. Wow, I'm glad I came in. Can you have a think about that for a moment? Remember, it's advertising English classes. It's aimed at international students. You. Okay, so I'll just repeat the context. The context is for English classes for international students, you. Now what is interesting about this image, of course, is how you are presented. So in this image, you are feminized. So international students become female. How old is she? Young. How young? Teenager, but younger than you. But that's interesting, because if you go back to Harry Match and the Black Boy, it's a presentation of the foreign other as a child or feminized. Right, how is she dressed? How many students do you see at Goldsmiths dressed like that? Well, it would be strange. But because how is she dressed?
Like a maid.
Like a maid. Or because, but then also you look at the way she has been drawn. What is that style? What does it remind you of? Yes.
Animation.
Animation. But specifically, what kind of animation?
I think adult animation.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah.
Adult animation. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Yes, because it's not. It could be argued. Remember, in all these interpretations, it's always going to be ambiguous. This is how it can be read, right? So what you have is the international student who is feminized, dressed as a maid. You know, what else about her? Oh, no. There's lots of problems. It's almost like manga style, animation style. Her eyes are made very large. She, of course, is being sexualized. That's why I can understand, you know, the short dress and obviously the style of clothes she's wearing. What else about this? The comparison with the black soldier at the beginning is very interesting. What does this actually tell you? What is interesting about this image? The point Roland Barthes made, of course, is that no image is natural or normal. That all of these images reflect certain power relations within a certain society. Okay. What does this image tell you? Does it tell you anything about international students? No. What does it tell you about? Fun? I know, I think it's even more interesting than that. It tells you, remember, when we looked at these images, what does it tell you about? I'm arguing that it reflects, you know, a consumer capitalist society and women's position within a Western capitalist society. What does this tell you? Great thing or not so great thing? Not so great thing. It tells you more about the culture that has produced it. That's the interesting thing about this image. Okay, this image is producing a stereotype of the foreign other. Okay, so I got the students to complain about it because you could argue it's sexist and it's racist. And this is an everyday image. Okay, this is an image that was almost up on college till I told the students in my semiology class, do you see a problem with this image? This is why, again, I've mentioned the reason why you're doing this understanding images thing is just to think about the critical theory that you're introduced to and actually apply it to the images that you see. In this image, you can talk about male gaze, you can talk about the foreign other, you can talk about this binary relationship between the viewer and the person to be viewed. This is a cultural product like anything else. It's a text, like a book or a film. Advertisements themselves can be read as a text. And again, going back to Barth's original quotation, there is nothing natural or normal about these things. They reflect certain power relationships within a given society at a moment in time. Any questions?
It's not about the intentions, about the premeditation of the image authors. It's the message that all image give us. It's not always a premeditation plan of the author that did the image.
Yes.
Yes. Sometimes it's a message that culture or big structures pass through the author.
Absolutely.
Without,
Yes, without realization.
Yeah.
Because it's the point again that if you say to the person who created this is racist, this is sexist, what would they say to you?
No.
No. It's just an image of advertising English lessons to international students. But this is the interesting part about it.
Yeah.
It has become naturalized. And this is why it's an interesting thing to look at. On the one hand, it's not interesting. It's a boring image that you're walking down the corridor at Goldsmiths. You're not going to think about twice. But because you're Goldsmith students, you're going to say to yourself, hold on, what's going on in this? It's a reflection of certain beliefs within a certain society. That the advertiser is not going to say to himself, I want to reflect this patriarchal society. All it is reflecting is what is natural or normal within that given society. That's what makes it interesting. Remember, what I'm also saying is, it's a question of these images are ambiguous, and that's what makes them interesting. As I say, the person who created this said, no, it's just an advertisement for inch glasses. Oh, same with the other earlier images. It's just an advertisement for perfume. Women want to be attractive, don't they?
Okay.
This one,
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, at Goldsmiths you see, because you've got professors of media and communication who have, what is that doing here? But the point is, yeah, in itself, you see, I think it is quite a banal image.
I think the society is almost, everybody is contaminated. We are contaminated of all of these things that are not good, like racism. And if we analyze each one of these class, you, me, everybody have information of these bad things. So it's really interesting in that way because we are reflecting that too in our image.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so frightening. Okay, because again, all the images I'm showing you are normal.
Yeah.
These are not described as sexist or racist images. They're just presented as normal images, everyday images. I mean, this one is, I think, pretty strange, but something, well, come on, back, something like this is everyday. And it reinforces a certain belief about the world, and in this case, the relationship between men and women. And you can say to me, that's fine. I would argue not so fine.
Is this a discourse?
Yeah, you're going that way, yeah. You could analyse it from that point of view, yeah. Dominant discourses within a certain society. Absolutely.
Okay. Roland Barthes also said that the way of leading is subject to leaders, not by authors.
Okay, so I'm being asked a good question here. Yes, you have to remember, I am referring to Roland Barthes, 1957. In 1957, Roland Barthes is actually only looking for one answer. He is looking for the truth. He is probably a communist. He is looking for the one answer. By 1968, in Death of the Author, he's turning everything around.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so your problem, I'm afraid, is that when people talk about people like Barthes or Foucault, you have to remember which Barthes you're talking about. Which Foucault are you talking about? They change their opinions. And why not? Barthes is he's alive, how long is he? He's 80 or something before he's finally killed. So he writes a lot of books. If he didn't change his mind, that would be strange. But remember, the key date is 1968. That is the key turning point in Western thought. So that's why I highlighted that this is written in 1957. Okay, this is a structuralist understanding of the world. 1968 and Death of the Author is a very different understanding of the world. But this is an introductory session. I was trying to keep it simple.
So I want to know, how can I explain the uses of semiology?
That it has largely been undermined by Death of the Author. Okay, because the argument in Death of the Author coincides with the birth of the reader. So when I'm talking to you about the ambiguity of these images, it is impossible for me to say, yes, you are right and you are wrong, because it's to do with the multiplicity of answers. as a Marxist, as a classical Marxist, I might give you, there is one interpretation for this, or one certainly very much preferred interpretation. As a post-structuralist of whichever variety, you could argue, well, we all have different experiences and different contexts, blah, blah, blah. There may be 1,000 ways of reading these images. But then you have the problem of relativism.
Yeah.
And I would argue that there are still preferred meanings. I think there are still better and worse meanings associated with these images. Because you might say to me, I think this image is about X, and you might say to me, it's about Y. And you might both be right, but you need to justify it. We don't have to, but you know, at a university you might want to. So do not go away and say, Gary said this image means that. Okay, that is my preferred understanding of this image. And it is for you to decide whether you think that this is, what's the word, not the best,
Correct.
well, yeah, because it's not even a question of right, it's the question of whether the degree to which you wish to agree with it or not. There may be other ways to interpret it. I keep making the point. The advertiser to this image might say, women want to be attractive, this is an attractive woman. You want to look like her, don't you? That is but that is the assumption that's being made in this image, that this is a beautiful woman. Good. Have I killed you? Yes, perfect. Last chance before I finish off. Okay. Oh.
I just wondered if there were any theorists that students could look at if they were interested in the perceived effects of the messages and the connotations that are being communicated through some of the advertising.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I've never actually thought about it that far. Because for the 9-weekers, they look at Foucault and Barthes, and then it sort of becomes more concrete. But I've got there's a nice reference, Representations. The classic book that's given to media and comm students when they're doing this is a book called Representations. Which is edited by Stuart Hall. There are about 20 copies of this sitting in the library. Okay, it's the undergraduate key text for this idea of representation. All right, but don't go away. You don't need. All you need for this course is the theory that you're introduced to with Ivor in postmodernities. Because it's not testing your knowledge of post-structuralist theory. It's part of a speaking class that you do on Thursday afternoons. And this reminds me, your homework for next week is to take in a nice image. And I'm deliberately using an ambiguous word. You decide what a nice image might be. It has to be an interesting image, an image that you can talk about. So don't bring an image that you can't talk about. So one that's interesting, but I can't say anything about it. So generally, that is images with people. Okay. Talking about people is always easier because you can usually look at the relationships either within the image or from the viewer outside looking in and looking out. And advertisements, in many ways, are quite straightforward. They have a very specific purpose, or they should have. A good advertisement, I think these are actually quite ambiguous, because I've asked students before, what is this selling? And they have to think. It's not, I don't think it's obvious that this is actually for that perfume. Okay, because I think the image here is so powerful. I think you look here before you look here. And remember, when you look at this image, you're not looking at it for 10 minutes doing a semiotic analysis. You know, you're just quickly going through your magazine. So I don't know how successful that is or not. You could argue that's pretty obvious. That's advertising that drink. It's at the front there. Yeah, it's eye-catching. It's more obvious. The other one, you could say, well, not that one. It's too subtle. You actually have to sit and think about it for a minute. Thinking, always linger. All right. So next week, take an image to your interpreting images.
Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, sorry, 1 second. My left hand, the cooling glass. Can you just stay in here? So we can talk about the tutorial.
How fun